Hi girls, it's Miss Gaska speaking. Today we're going to go over English 4 Semester 1 Week 1, Activity 1.3, the importance of perspective. Our learning targets for this activity are to analyze a scenario from multiple perspectives and write a monologue from a particular perspective in response to a scenario. Our learning strategies are going to be a graphic organizer, think, pair, share, and drafting. We're not going to use think, pair, share because of the online modality. How are perspectives different? Everyone has a unique perspective from which they view the world. A number of factors, including life experiences, education, significant relationships, occupations, and religious and political affiliations, help shape an individual's perspective. So I think that's all kind of important, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. Because if you think about it, the way we see things is directly affected by the experiences that we've had that tell us how to see things. So for example, if I've only ever seen one dog ever, and that dog bites me, then I might have a perspective that dogs are mean. Or if I only ever see one cat and that cat scratches me, I might believe that all cats are mean. That would be my perspective. It's not necessarily based on reality, but it's just based on the way I've experienced things and the way I've interpreted them. So our perspective is unique to who we are as people. So look over here in our academic vocabulary. It gives us two words that were in our vocabulary section from the table of contents page. It gives us perspective and scenario. So a perspective is a viewpoint or way of looking at the world, or a particular conception of things or events. Our perspective influences how we perceive the world. So basically, it's like our point of view that tells us how things are. And a scenario is an outline, a brief account, or a synopsis of events. Basically, it's kind of like a small thing to tell you how something happens, and you're supposed to put yourself in that person's shoes. So think about your everyday interactions with other people. Some interactions can look very different depending on the viewpoints of the different participants. Your perception of an event or interaction depends on your unique perspective, which has been influenced in many ways over the course of your life. So in order to illustrate this idea, consider the following scenario. On your way to school, you see a student who has been pulled over by a police officer. You perceive the student's frustration as the officer writes out a traffic ticket. So we're going to complete the graphic organizer on the following page, imagining the response of each individual in the scenario or situation. Consider these points when responding. Each person in the scenario will have a distinct perspective on the situation. Each person in the scenario will have a different level of connection to the consequences of the situation, which will in turn influence the response. For example, one person will have to pay the ticket. Each person in the scenario will also be subject to a variety of factors that are unrelated to the ticket and that will also influence the response. For example, if the traffic is moving more slowly due to ticket distraction, someone may be late for work. So, let's keep going to the chart. So we're going to think about how each of these people might be affected by perspective. So the student being ticketed. First, we're going to think about the thoughts running through this person's mind. And I'm just going to do this with you to give you a clear idea of what perspective is, since it's such an important topic to this unit. So the student being ticketed, I'm going to change my font size to be a little smaller, might be like, I can't believe I'm being ticketed. I didn't do anything wrong, or I didn't think I would be caught. I hope the fine isn't too high. My parents are going to kill me. So that's probably what I would be thinking if I were a student going through that situation, because most likely my parents are going to be the one paying the ticket if I don't have a job. I'm going to be annoyed that I was caught or didn't think that I was doing anything wrong to begin with. Probably going to have a lot of frustration. So some of the things I just mentioned are possible factors influencing this person's response. It could be their personal belief that they didn't do anything wrong, that they are innocent, their parents attitudes. Job status could affect them, like, oh man, I just saved up enough for whatever it is I was saving up for. Now I have to spend my money to pay this ticket. So that's another thing that could affect them. The attitude of the police officer, like maybe the police officer is being like really rude, or maybe they're being really nice, and so that might affect the way that the student being ticketed responds to them. So then the primary goal or objective of this person. Well, if I was a student being ticketed, my primary goal would be like getting out of the ticket. Or ending the conversation with the officer as fast as I could so that I could drive away and be mad and get over it eventually. So the officer writing the ticket, what are they thinking? So if I were an officer writing a ticket, I would be like thinking about the crime that the student did. So maybe they were speeding or something, or maybe they were driving without their headlights on. This young kid was driving poorly. Good thing I stopped them so they wouldn't get hurt. I feel bad ticketing them, but I want them to learn not to drive this way. So the officer may be thinking something like that about like, oh, well, I don't have to ticket them, but if I don't, maybe they won't learn their lesson, and maybe, and maybe they'll continue to drive poorly, and I don't want that to happen. I have like a responsibility to make sure that this area stays safe. So their thoughts or their possible factors influencing their decision could be like the fact that they want to keep the road safe, they want to teach the student a valuable lesson, they want to do their job, they want to do a good job. Sometimes they have like a quota they want to meet, which basically means like an amount of people they have to give tickets to each month, depending on the department. So the primary goal or objective of this person, well, the officer's primary goal is to give the student a ticket to encourage them to drive better in the future. Keep the road safe. So that would probably be like what the officer's perspective is. And then the parent of the student being ticketed who happens to be driving by. So the parent is driving by and sees their own child being ticketed. Is that my child? What in the world did they get pulled over for? Should I have a word with that officer? I'm definitely going to have a word with my child when they get home. So they're probably concerned, they're probably feeling like a little angry either at the officer or at the student. They might feel a little protective, and the reason they would feel these things is because it's their child. They're probably the ones going to pay the ticket. Their insurance rates might go up. They're worried for their child because they might, feel protective against the officer. And so the parent's primary goal is to probably find out what happened in the interaction with the officer in order to decide what to do next. And so I'm going to leave these remaining two for you guys to do. I think that I've given some good examples here to show you how I would do it. So you only have these two left. The best the favorite teacher who's driving by, and the best friend of the student being ticketed. And then down here it says, based on your information from the graphic organizer, which individual's perspective do you relate to most closely? In what ways is that person's perspective similar or different to yours? So you could go ahead and jot that down in this My Notes section, and that'll take care of the check your understanding part. For the narrative writing prompt, it says select one of the perspectives listed in the graphic organizer and compose a monologue from that perspective in which you can recount the incident to one of the other observers. Be sure to structure your monologue with a clear and coherent sequence of events. Incorporate tone and diction appropriate to the speaker you have chosen. Include details that the speaker would notice or care about, and not those that would not be known or significant to the speaker. So a few terms I want to go over really quickly in case you don't remember. So a monologue is a speech where one person is talking from their own perspective. So it's basically like a speech, but you have to write it rather than speak it. And then it wants you to incorporate tone and diction. So if you don't remember, tone is word choice. I'm going to write that on the side here just so that you know. Or I'm sorry, tone is writer's attitude toward the subject, conveyed through like the words that they use. Diction is word choice, like dictionary. So then it wants you to include details that would be known to the speaker. And that's all for activity 1.3. I hope that this was informative for you, and I hope that it's clear what you should do for this activity. If you need any help or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be glad to give you any kind of assistance. Thanks for watching. Take care.